hope.
Yeah, the stream's back.
Okay, cool. All right. I will try to answer your questions via chat, both in Discord and in Twitch, but that might cause a little bit of pausing here and there while I'm conducting the demo and chatting, but I'll do my best. So here we go. Oh yeah, so questions about making the candle stick holder again, or the candlestick again. So there are a few different methods, but the way that I went over this last class and the way that I feel like is the simplest way to do it, especially starting out, is to start with primitives. I'm hearing a lot of beeping, so I'm going to check over to Discord really quick. General chat. Okay, cool. Yes. I've never used Twitch before. Hey, I'm relatively new to it myself. I've only been using it for a few weeks. Yeah, let's... okay. So, let's just do the thing. So, starting with primitives, right? Pretty standard. When you make a primitive, depending on the creation method, you might have two different ways to create this. Now, this sounds strange, and you might be wondering what the hell I'm talking about, but right now I'm on something called interactive creation, which is to say that we click once to make the base of the cylinder and then a second time to make the height of the cylinder. You don't have to have that on. So if you'd prefer, you can go to create, you can go to poly primitives, and look at this all the way in the bottom, we have interactive creation. So if you turn that off, then when you click on your primitive, it's just going to pop into place. In other words, you're not going to have that ability to create the base and the height. So this is just a difference in modeling from, actually, believe it or not, from 3D Studio Max versus Maya. 3D Studio Max invented the interactive creation thing, and when Autodesk acquired Maya a while ago, they kind of ended up stealing from one another, but, you know, Max would steal from Maya, Maya would steal from Max, but once they were under the same, you know, the same company, it's not really stealing at that point, is it? It's just like, oh, we're going to have this interactive creation thing now in Maya, which was in Max. Okay, a little history lesson for you there, but point is that you can either use interactive creation or not. Totally up to you. So, just a little difference in how you make your primitives. Okay, next, I've got my primitive here. We were talking about this the other day. You should add some subdivisions when you create your primitive. I would not add that many. I try to keep things as simple as possible. So resist the urge to jump up to like 20 subdivisions in the height. Like, it's like, that's a lot. You know, that's just too many. You might end up with that at the end of this, but let's not start there. Always start small. Start simple, like 6 or 8. Let's go with 8. And, you know, this is just kind of blocking out these shapes and forms. And how many edge loops do I need for that? Again, start with a small number because you can always add more edge loops. Next, the caps. The caps, top and bottom of the cylinder, always at least have 2. You can have more if you want, but let's just start with 2. And so at this point, we can start to model or match our reference. Does anybody need me to go over the image plane thing again, like loading in an image plane? Can I get a yes, no from that? Why are we meeting now?
Yes, please.
Okay, sure. Did I send the message to the wrong class? Did I? Oh, for those people that are in section 5, if you want to watch this, you can. I'm going to repeat this again next class. But let's go over the image plane thing again. Here we go. You're more than welcome. I mean, this is broadcasting publicly, so in fact, anybody could watch this right now. I'm not restricting this to anyone. So here we go, image plane. You could make a new camera if you wanted to under Create Camera, and you could definitely apply an image plane to a new camera. That is a common thing. But what I like to do, at least in the beginning here, is I like to go to my quad view. And remember, the quad view is at the bottom of your toolbar. It's this guy down here. So it's like perspective, quad view, right? And then in my quad view, and don't forget from last class, F for fit, right? And then that way you can select your object and fit it to the screen. So then pick which view works for a profile. So like in this case, either the side view or maybe the front view, either one would probably work in this case. So I'll go to View, I'll go to Image Plane, and I'll say Import Image. Then find your photo reference. Always use photo reference. I know people argue with me all the time about this. Like, I always get blowback about it. Like, why do we always have to use photos? And I'm like, you know, I'm not saying that when you like, it's like when you get better with 3D, you can certainly model your own illustrations. The rabbit that you see on my Twitch avatar or in my Discord avatar, I modeled that from my own drawing. I mean, you know, of course you can model from drawings. Of course you can model from concept art. But for the start, for the beginning, for right now, let's just concentrate on using photography because you'll get a lot better, quicker that way. Okay, next, spacebar, right, will minimize or maximize your viewports. You're going to find that when you load your image plane in, it's going to probably bisect the middle of your scene. So I actually like to push it back, personally, because I find my reference bisecting my object to be kind of annoying. So I just push it back. But then make sure you can see it in the side view, which I can. So I'm good. I'll just keep going here. So I go back to my side view. And then I kind of block in this by move, scale, rotate, meaning like I move it roughly into place, right? R for scale. Don't forget your keyboard shortcuts here, right? So W is move, you know, R is scale, and of course E is rotate. For right now, you probably should not be rotating anything. You should probably just be moving and scaling for the most part. And then just start this way. Just getting like the general shape and size. And now we want to focus on the profile. And like I said, this is just one way to do this. There are actually many different ways to do this. I just wanted to start this way because, again, I feel like it's the easiest to start with. And interrupt me if you guys have any questions at any time, please. Candlestick holder. I'm naming my objects in the outliner. You can turn the outliner on and off at the very bottom of your toolbar. Your outliner is basically a scene explorer. You should probably keep this on most of the time just because it's a lot easier to see what's going on in your scene. And please, please, please try to get in the habit of always naming stuff. Especially, I mean, if you were to work for a studio and you gave them a Maya scene or you passed on your Maya scene to the next artist, they would be really angry at you if you didn't name the stuff in your scene. In fact, you might even get fired over it. So just, you know, hey, get in the habit of always naming stuff. It will save your butt later. Okay, moving on. We need now to get these sort of undulations, get this sort of profile here. If you remember the shortcuts...
Someone was asking if you can go over setting up the camera real quick.
Sure, again, setting up the camera, yes. So, at the bottom of the toolbar here, we have the perspective view. That's one camera. That's here in your outliner, perspective camera. That's this icon here. If I click under that, this quad view, that's the rest of these cameras. Like there's my top, there's my front, there's my side. These are always in Maya by default. Later on, when we get to render our scene, and we're going to hopefully in the next week or so begin rendering stuff, then we should make a new camera, which we should make as a render camera, and actually call it render camera, even label it render camera. That's what I need to render from. You should, generally speaking, never render from these cameras. So a big common mistake is people always want to render from the perspective. Don't do it. Just don't. Like, really. Your perspective is for modeling. Your top view is for modeling. Your front and side view, all these 4 views, all for modeling. For rendering, make your own camera. I cannot emphasize that enough. Okay, we haven't gotten to rendering yet, but just for future reference. What we want to do right now is we want to load in some image plane reference, some photo reference. So pick which camera works best for this. If I had some kind of photo reference of the top, then I would load my image plane into the top view. In this case, my image plane or my photo reference should be the profile or the side view, or maybe the front view in this case. Either one should work. I'll go with side, view, view, image plane, import image. Then Pick your image, like that, and there's the image plane. Now, the reason you don't see it is because currently it's being covered by my geometry. See, if I push it back, and W again is move. So if you don't have your little widget up, then W will activate your move. Just like E will activate rotate and R will activate scale. So we want to scale this guy up like that. We want to hit W for move, and then move your reference. I like to move the reference so that if you notice, the y-axis here goes right through the middle. That's oftentimes good for symmetry. It's just a good habit to get into. If you remember from last class, maybe write this down or just refer to your syllabus. But 4 is wireframe, 5 is shaded. So again, 4 is wireframe, 5 is shaded, 6 is texture mode. If we had a texture, we don't. And then remember that if you want to use 2, that's your base mesh plus your preview, and 3 is your smooth preview, and then 1 goes back to your base mesh. So 1, 2, 3, 4 wireframe, 5 shaded. All right, hopefully that's clear. Now, let's, any more questions about the image plane or setting up cameras for reference at all? Everybody got that? I don't think he's reading Discord. I'm trying to read Discord simultaneously.
No, I was reading someone's comment, but I don't know.
Yeah. No, I'm looking at the general chat right now, and Ryan is saying you might want to put your quest in Twitch because I don't think he's reading Discord. Oh, request. I'm trying to read both. But if I have the Twitch window open, oh, yes. I have to kind of pop back and forth. Sorry about that. So I'm reading now the Twitch. Try to, I guess, since we're doing Twitch today and going forward, try to keep, I guess, the chat during the demo in Twitch so I don't have to look at 2 chat windows. That would be pretty cool. So, yeah, and if you guys are in the second section, like the 330 to 550 class, I'm going to repeat this then, so you can watch this demo, or you can watch it during class or whatnot. Get out of here or hang out. Yeah. Should we stick to the Twitch chat? Yes, you should. All right. Awesome. All right. Everybody good then? Is there any other question about the camera or the image plane? Hopefully not. Remember that the image plane exists as a node in the outliner. So you can, of course, rename this by double-clicking. We could say candle reference, for example. If you want to do that, you can. Excuse me. The most important thing to keep in mind, though, is you should be able to select the image plane in the outliner, and then you can move it around or scale it from there. And always move it away from the center, because, again, having your model bisected with your photo reference is kind of annoying, at least in my opinion. And you can always go back to the side view by tapping the spacebar. Okay, so now let's actually shape this guy. So from last class, if you remember your shortcuts, polygon components, F9 is going to be vertex selection. So then I could potentially move these vertices around, for example, or I could scale them, always use the gold box. So that's one way to do it. You could definitely select your vertices. Another way to do it, of course, is to use edges, which is what I was doing last class. The way that you select an edge loop, by the way, is to double click it. And here's a pretty cool technique. If you try using your try using your arrow keys. Once you have a loop selected, just try this out yourself. If you tap on your arrow keys, right and left, you can see that the edge loop is going up and down by using your left and right arrow key. So that's pretty cool. That's like an easy way to get through, instead of always having to like double tap each time. Like maybe you can just use your arrow keys. You know, just giving you options, right? So then from here, I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, W for move, maybe, and then I can sort of get there, R for scale, use that gold box, like so. And then you can use your right or left arrow key to get to the next edge loop. and then continue, right? Arrow key, scale. And this is very broad. I'm just blocking this in. I'm going to go back and add more edge loops, you know. But the arrow keys are your friend in Maya. Oh my God, they're so cool. I know it sounds kind of funny to say that, but not only can you use your arrow keys to go through your edge loops, but check it out. If that's the left and right arrow key, but look, if I switch to the up arrow key, I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but now I have an edge row selected. See, this is a row versus a loop. And if I use the up and down button, then I can actually go through rows. Now I have rows. So up and down gives me rows versus left and right allows me to go through my loops. So that's pretty cool, I think, anyway. So just as a review again, left and right arrow keys allows you to go through different, or shift, I guess, through different edge loops on your model. Versus the up and down arrow key will change to rows, and then you can toggle between rows. So like if I have this guy selected and I press up, see, that's a row of edges that I have selected now. If I go up and down, then I'm going through my rows. Now, if that's not cool enough, I think that's cool. But if that's not cool, check this out. If I select a vertice, then I can use my arrow key to actually move that vertice selection around. This is called pick walking. And if for some reason you lose a vertice, you can pick a vertice near the lost vertice and then pick walk or arrow key to the one that's hidden. So kind of a cool thing, I think. Arrow keys, try them out. They're your friend. Pretty cool stuff. Yeah, and ask questions in the chat, or, I mean, if you don't mind speaking up in Discord, that's fine too, whichever. I'm here to answer your questions. So please, if you have questions, don't be shy. Alright, next, double click the edge loop, scale again. Just keep blocking this guy out. Okay, so that's a really, really rough block in, right? Not particularly impressive. But
I have a question.
Yes.
So when you like double click like one of the outer edge loops to bring it in, I kept having this issue when I was scaling it. Like it wouldn't stay a circle when I scaled it. It would like bend into an oval, and then I had to do the other plane.
Yeah, so you always, okay, so when you're using the gold box in the center, that's scaling in all of the axes. If you accidentally scale in a different axis, like the Z axis, then look, when I go to my perspective, you're going to see I get this, and I don't want that. I mean, at least not for this particular, not for this candlestick. Yeah.
So just use the yellow one.
Only the middle box will scale uniformly. This is a uniform scale, meaning that it's scaling in all the axes simultaneously. So,
Got it. Okay.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. There's something else I saw another student have trouble with, so I just want to mention this right now. If for some reason your scaling is like popping or stepping, which is a common problem, it's an easy thing to fix. Watch this. If you go to your toolbar and you double click the scale tool option, so by double clicking this, it's going to open up your tool settings. And sometimes this gets broken occasionally. And what happens is, and I know at least one student already has this problem, for some reason there's a shortcut, and I need to look it up, but there's a shortcut that turns on stepping or snapping. And so this gets turned on to like, oh, I don't know, relative or absolute or something. Let's see what happens. So if I turn it on to relative, then it's going to snap 1 unit. So now watch what happens. When I scale, it's like pop, 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 pop. So it's snapping by 1 unit now. That's what this is doing. And I mean, that's convenient if you want to be very, very, very precise about your scaling. I only want to scale 0.2 units. Now it's going to only scale by 0.2 units. I find that obnoxious, personally. So generally speaking, I turn that off. But if that gets turned on by accident, because there is definitely a shortcut. In fact, I think it's the J button or perhaps the Shift J button that does it. Anyway, if you accidentally turn on your snapping or your stepping, step snapping, whatever, then this is how you turn it off. Just in case, I know at least one student already ran into that problem. So, okay, and again, like just stop me or speak up or I guess put something in the chat if you have questions. And I'll try to continue double checking the chat window as I work, or, preferably just speak up in the Discord. It's easier for me to hear you, even though I am hearing the beep beep of the chatting. So this might sound dumb, but can anyone else not see the drop down menus? What if Maya is constantly crashing? Mine kept crashing and I don't know why. Okay, I don't know about the Maya crashing stuff. That would be an IT question. You should be seeing the drop down menus when like this. I'll try tearing them off. Maybe this helps. Does that help? I don't know why the drop down menus. Well, hey, this is worth going over too. If you want to tear off a menu, any of these menus, any of these drop down menus, click on the drop down menu, you're going to see a double line here. If you click on that double line, look at that. Now I've got this as a floating window, which can be very convenient, especially with these edit mesh options, or perhaps with mesh tools, same idea. See, because in mesh tools that we have our friend the insert edge loop tool, which is pretty important. In fact, that's what I'm going to use next, right? So we don't have enough edge loops is the problem. So I click on insert edge loop, and then I click and drag, and now I create a new edge loop, which then I want to basically scale immediately, like that, right? Boom. And you'll notice that this is kind of a fairly creased lip. So if you do that a second time, and then make sure to pinch your edge loops together, you'll notice immediately it's preserving this detail. I'll do it again up here at the top, where I pinch my edge loops together. Now look at what happens when I hit the 3 button. So what I'll do is I'll hit F8 to go to object mode. Notice it turns green. Then I'll hit the 3 button, and look at the difference. Look what I've just done. You can see the work. By adding those edge loops and pinching them together, I've kind of created this sharper form. Without edge loops, these undulations are really gradual and really soft, and you're not selling anybody on this, right? Compared to this. So then we go back and we repeat this process where we want to make new edge loops. If you recall from last class, this is going to be the last used tool here, and it's really easy to get to by hitting the Y button. So the Y button is going to just simply select whatever you had last tool selected, and then repeat the process of adding new edge loops. And with each new edge loop I add, I have the option of scaling it or moving it. I suggest moving it only up or down, because obviously moving it side to side at this point doesn't really make a lot of sense. Another thing I mentioned last class, which might be useful to you, is you can go to shading and you can go to X-ray. And so if that helps you, see, I'm kind of looking at this going, this probably should be scaled in a little bit more. X-ray does kind of annoy me, so I kind of turn it on and off. So I mentioned last class that what I like to do always is I like to model basically in my base mesh mode or with one mode, but then I'll click to 3 to kind of see what I'm doing. And 4 is again wireframe. So I can double click and continue to scale. Definitely it's going to look a bit different in smooth mode, but it's a little bit more stable if you model in one or base mesh mode. So I can see that there's this kind of ridge here. Hopefully everybody sees this ridge that I'm talking about. So I'll continue to add edge loops by hitting the Y button, making my edge loop, scaling my edge loop, hit Y to repeat the tool, make another edge loop, hit R for scale, always the gold box, and now you can see I'm kind of making this ridge, or this little, this stripe, this ridge, whatever you want to call it. I hit the 3 button. It's not quite what I want. It's close, but not quite. So I hit the 1 button again, I hit Y to repeat the tool, And look, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to simply slide edge loops again close together. And when you slide these edge loops close together, and also notice that I'm adding edge loops on either side. And then I hit the 3 button, and now I've got what I'm looking for. So hit F8, see? That's that shape. Somebody's got to have some questions, I can tell. You guys got to have questions. Yes, no? I can't see what either. This was mentioned in Discord. I don't know if we touched on it, but what are we supposed to do for attendance today? For attendance, are you here? You're here, then that's the attendance. I don't know. That's a weird question. Yeah. So, how do you select an edge loop all the way around the object? Double click. And remember to use your left and right arrow key to shift or go through your different edge loops. Okay? And don't be afraid of adding edge loops. Like right now, I see that this has a very particular shape to it here. So what I'll do again is I'll click 1 to go back to my base mesh. I'll select it, and then I'll kind of look at this like, this definitely feels like we have another undulation right here, right? So then F10 to select your edge loop, double click, hit R for scale, something like that. Maybe this guy down here. Q, by the way, is select. So Q for select, double click the edge loop. Move it up. Scale again. Scale again in the gold box. Like that. And then Y to repeat the tool. Click. Slide. Scale. Now, how do we know if we need more edge loops or not? Well, the best way to figure that out is to hit the 3 button and see if it matches. And if it doesn't match, like maybe we want, again, a little bit more tighter detail down here perhaps. So if you want tighter detail, what is the answer? The answer is, you guessed it, add more edge loops. So Y to repeat the tool, and then slide and pinch your edge loops together. The closer you pinch your edge loops together, the more refined the crease is, I guess you could say, or by pinching together your edge loops, you're creating tighter detail. I guess that's the best way I can put it. And then to check that again, hit the 3 button. Q for select, F8. Does it look like this? I mean, it's getting closer, right? That's the general idea. Let's keep going. I don't want you guys to think you cannot model in 3 mode. Of course you can model in 3 mode, so I could definitely select my edge loop here in 3 mode and scale. Do I recommend this? Well, I mean, if you have a fairly fast computer, relatively speaking, then yeah, you'll be fine. This does get a little confusing, and it also slows down stuff sometimes. So typically, just to make things easier, I'll model in 1, and add my edge loops in 1, and you can add as many edge loops as you want. But just remember that you generally want to scale them after adding them, or move them maybe. Y to repeat the tool. Then I check with the 3 button. I hit Q for select, F8 for object selection. I click off of it. I can see that this shape does not match this shape. What do I do about it? Well, I select it. I hit 1, F10 for edge mode, double click. In this case, I'm going to move this guy up. Oop, that's too far. Move it up. And then I'll hit Y, make a new edge loop, scale this guy, something like that. Hit the 3 button. Now we're getting a little bit closer. Again, Y to move. You can move the edge loops up and down or scale them. Don't forget that your arrow keys will actually select your different edge loops. Is this making sense to you guys? Hopefully. Use your arrow keys to go through your edge loops. Make sense? Somebody say yes. Anybody? So to preserve an edge, you bring the edges close together. Yes, to preserve your detail, you want to squeeze your edge loops together. That's exactly right. Sometimes my edge loops don't show up. Is there a limit to how many edge loops can be in one area? No, there's no limit. You can have as many edge loops as you want. I suggest starting with a few edge loops and then adding edge loops as you go, because it's a lot harder to have, I don't know, like 20 or 30 edge loops, and then you find yourself removing edge loops at that point. So, like a drawing or like a painting, you want to always work from simple to complex. Or typically, I should say, you want to work from simple to complex. So notice I only started with like 8 edge loops, and now I'm just adding my edge loops as I need them. So that's the preferred method, I think. So if you have too many, how do you remove them? Oh, that's a really good question. Thank you. I'm so glad you asked that. Okay, so if you want to get rid of an edge loop, like say we'll get rid of this guy down here. This is really, really, really important. So guys, definitely please pay attention, write this down, whatever you need to do. If you hit the delete button, you will get rid of the edge loop. Boop. But what's the problem? I don't know if you guys can see what I just did. The edge loop's gone, but what you have instead are a bunch of floating vertices. And this is a big no-no. And the reason why this is a big no-no is we no longer are modeling in quads. And so one really important thing that I really, really want to impart to you guys, in fact, I'm going to even, this is so important, I'm going to write this in capital letters in the Discord chat and put it in announcements, because that's exactly how important this is. Always model in quads as often as possible. So if you're modeling in pentagons, octagons, I don't know, any kind of, anything other than quads, then you're modeling in something we call an n-gon. And an n-gon is evil, fruits of the devil. Do not model an n-gon. Well, generally speaking, n-gons are just bad, so we want to avoid them, right? So we only want to model in quads. So then how do I get rid of this edge loop and actually take the vertices with it? Again, I repeat, if you hit the delete button, the vertices are left over. That's bad. So what do? Instead, we hold down Control plus backspace, and look at that. That actually takes the edge loop out with the vertices. So remember that when you're deleting an edge loop, always hold down the Control button, and that way you'll get the vertices and the edges simultaneously. And if you don't do that, whoops, then what are we left with? We're left with floating vertices, which typically are bad, and this is no longer a quad. And we always want to model in quads. Well, almost always. I'll get back to that later, but just try to get in the habit of modeling in quads whenever possible. So that's how you want to delete an edge loop, because I'm very fond of giving you guys multiple ways to do anything. I'm that guy. And why am I that guy? Because guess what? Things break. And so if something breaks and you can't do it for whatever reason, then if you have a second way to do it, then hey, you know, that's the nice thing about Maya. There are multiple ways to do anything. So again, backspace leaves the vertices behind. You don't want that. So Control backspace takes the whole edge loop out. So that's one way to do it. There is another way to do it. The other way to do it is to hold down your Shift button, hold down right click, and you're going to see, oh my God, that's a lot of polygon modeling tools. So this is like a great shortcut to know, because you might notice, oh, look at that. There's the Insert Edge Loop tool. That's cool. And there is Delete Edge. Oh yeah, that's what I'm after. So I want to reiterate that, because that I think is really, really, really good information for you guys. So one more time, if you're hovering over a component, or actually if you have a component selected, like I have an edge selected right here, then I can get to most of my modeling tools simply by holding down Shift and right click. And look, I've got all these great tools available to me, such as Insert Edge Loop tool, or Slide Edge Loop, or Bridge, Fill Hole, all these other tools that normally would be found in these menus here under Mesh Tools, right? So basically what I'm saying is you can either go up here to Mesh Tools, which does take like mouse effort, or let's cut down on the mouse miles. Yeah, that's a thing. You didn't know about that? Mouse miles? You don't want your mouse miles. Mouse miles are bad. What that means is you're constantly moving your mouse always over. Oh God, that's just, don't do that. Instead, hold down Shift right click, and there's your Insert Edge Loop tool. That should save you some time, right? Because that's what it's really about. It's not just like how well you model, it's how fast you model, right? So then why to repeat the tool? That's why I'm a big fan of shortcuts. And that's why the 3D artist that knows their shortcuts will keep their job over the 3D artist that doesn't know their shortcuts. I'm not trying to make your life hard. I'm just stating a fact. Besides, it's extra credit, right? So why to repeat the tool? When I say extra credit, I mean typically what I'll do is I'll give like 10 extra credit keyboard shortcut options, or 10 shortcuts on your quiz that will be worth 10 extra points. So you can get a whole letter grade extra if you know your shortcuts on your quiz. And besides that, you really should just know them. So look at this. Arrow key right, arrow key left. Let's go arrow key right. See how that works? Right versus left. You can kind of go through your edge loops. Q for select. Y to repeat the tool. And always add multiple edge loops if you want to preserve your detail. Squeeze your edge loops together. The closer that you squeeze your edge loops together, the more the detail is preserved. So if I really want this stripe here to be very obvious, I'll hit Y to repeat the tool, and I'll squeeze up to 3 edge loops very close together. And if you squeeze 3 edge loops really close together, now watch what happens. I hit the 3 button, and I hit F8 for object mode, and that's looking pretty good. Well, it's not perfect, but it's getting there. So this is the process, right? And by the way, this is the process for a lot of 3D modeling. This is why I always go over this first, because you can basically apply this to almost any kind of 3D modeling. Add edge loop, slide edge loop, pinch edge loops together, scale, move, rinse, wash, repeat. And that can be applied to just like so many different things that you might be modeling. In fact, we're going to do this again for a table. We're going to use basically the exact same technique, but we're going to make a table today, soon, like as soon as possible. See how I'm pinching these edge loops together to really define that detail? And then hit the 3 button, and then if you want, you can hit F8 for object mode, click off of it, and yeah, just kind of continue with that process until you get the candlestick. Is it okay if I stop with this, with just like the assumption that you guys are gonna add all the edge loops you need and continue to make this perfect shape? Because I'd like to get to the candle and the wick. Also, I want to mention soft select at this point. Soft select, somebody found by accident with the B button. So this is how it works. Whatever component you have selected, let's say I have one vertice selected. F9, I select the vertice, or even a few vertices, so just do it this way. Now, I have these vertices selected. If I move them, you're going to see that I'm only moving those vertices. So somebody must have hit the B button by accident, but that's a good way to teach it. B button. What the heck did I just do? Well, what I've done is I've turned on soft select, and you can see that now I have a fall off here. If I hold down B plus left click drag, then I can increase my fall off. And what this allows me to do now with an increased fall off is now when I move it, it's moving everything. Ooh, yeah, impressive. Okay, whatever. That's just a way to move around a lot of stuff at once, right? And again, B left click drag. So, for example, if I wanted to change the overall shape of this, it's just that easy. to do so. That's why soft select is very useful, because by holding down again B, left click drag, you can see the circle expands, you can see the color changes, showing you your fall off. Yellow is going to be 100%, going to orange, going to red. And now again, I can just change the overall shape of my candlestick holder, or candle holder, whatever, very quickly, super fast. So soft select was and is an incredibly powerful tool, because if you can't sculpt your geometry in ZBrush or Mudbox or Maya, let's just pretend you're adverse to sculpting for some reason, then soft select is what we had before we had sculpting. So now that we have sculpting, people don't use soft select quite as much as they used to, but it's still like super valuable and super important. If you want to warp anything, it's really nice. Oh, turning it off and on is the B button. So just tap the B button once to turn it on. Hold down the B button and drag to change your fall off. Tap the B button again to turn it off. That should really, really help you guys, I hope. So if you have too many edge loops, how do you remove them? It's going to be Control backspace or Command backspace if you're on a Mac. I went from 22 people to 19, so I don't know. Hopefully people are still watching. I don't know. Who's got questions for me? I want to move on from the candlestick holder, or I keep saying that, candle holder or candlestick. I want to move on to the candle and the wick, so we can move on to the table. That would be great. But I need to make sure that you guys don't have any questions. I don't want to move too fast. Anybody have any questions? All right. If there are no questions, I'm going to keep going. Nobody's saying anything. I'm going to keep going. All right, let's go ahead and add the candle. You can go back to your perspective if you wish. Make a new cylinder. How many subdivisions do we need? Well, probably not too many, because there's no undulations, there's no weird profile or whatever. So probably subdivisions in height 2 or 3 or 4. This is interesting because, I mean, you always should generally stay with as few polygons and as few subdivisions as possible. Always, 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 always. Do we really need 4 subdivisions for this shape? I don't think we do, actually. So I'm actually going to go back to the 1 and 1. Well, your cap should always be at least 2. So I'll make the caps 2. For the subdivision height, I could make it 2, 3, 4, whatever. But I feel like, in the interest of low poly modeling and modeling efficiently, then back to your insert edge loop tool. And remember, you can go to your mesh tool palette, or I think I just showed you guys a minute ago this really cool trick where you can select a component, use shift right click, insert edge loop tool, and that's even better. That's even faster. And then we can make only 2 new edge loops, slide them to where I need them to be, hit the 3 button. Look at that. That looks pretty good. And I didn't have to add too many polygons. So now I can scale this and move it into place. This is something we went over last class. I want to review this because it's pretty useful. If I want to snap one thing to another, we do have our snapping shortcuts. So I want to go over these because they're just like super, super useful. So your snapping shortcuts in line down the keyboard. Of course, Z is undo, or Control Z is undo. But then we have X. And notice that when I hold down the X button, you can actually see up here that becomes highlighted. So that's your grid snapping. Check it out. If I hold down X, then I can drag the gold circle and it's going to snap to my grid. That's kind of valuable, but that's nowhere near as valuable as the V button for vertex or vertice, vertex snapping. This is the one I really like because see how fast I can snap the object to the center vertice. And that really saves a lot of time. And again, it saves on mouse miles. So if something's like way over here and I got to drag it all the way over here. Like, I have carpal tunnel. I don't want you guys to have carpal tunnel. Don't make the same mistakes. That's why I'm here to help. Hold down V for vertex snapping, and you see it just snaps right to where I want it to go. Now, then you might ask, well, that's great, but that's X for grid snapping and V for vertex snapping. What about C? I'm glad you asked. C is curve snapping. So yes, you can snap to curves as well. I just don't have any curves in my scene, so then obviously it's not going to snap to anything that's not there. If I had curves in my scene, then I could use C for curve snapping. So X, C, V. X is grid snapping, C is curve snapping, and V is vertex snapping. So those are your snapping tools. By the way, it's also up here. X for, again, grid snapping, C for curve snapping, V for vertex snapping. And this is brand new. This is new in, I think, 2020. We've got snap to projected center and even snap to view planes. These are new. I don't really use them too much, but still cool. So there's my candle. I want to name everything. Name it in the outliner. Candle, candlestick, holder. And now we'll make the wick. We were talking about soft select a minute ago. So as a review, maybe I want to taper this candle a little bit. I can double click my edge loop. I can turn on B for soft select, hold down B to change my fall off. And what this will allow me to do is now taper the candle if I want to. I mean, this candle doesn't appear to be very tapered, but if you have a tapered candle, that's how you could do it. Double click your edge loop, turn on soft select, bam, tapering. Okay, remember, hit the 3 button, hit F8 for object select, click off of the model. That looks pretty good. Good enough? Yeah. Okay, questions, anyone? No questions? I'm looking for people with questions. Hi, Gray. I'm having trouble locating a camera to use to take pictures. Oh, that's a different class. Sorry. Stick to the Twitch chat. Sorry about that. How do I select the edge loop all the way around? Double click the edge loop. Sometimes edge loops don't show up. I don't know why they wouldn't show up. That's weird. Make sure you're in component mode. Hit F10 for your edge mode. That's F10. Is there a limit to how many edge loops can be in one area? No. But if you pinch them close enough together, I mean like really close together, then you might run into some problems with edge loops overlapping each other. That can sometimes be an issue, but no, there's no limit. You can add thousands of edge loops. It's just a question of it becoming difficult when the edge loops are so close together that you can't tell how close they are, or maybe they're overlapping. To remove them again, I suggest using Control Backspace, because if you use Backspace, it will leave vertices behind. Does the location of the camera matter? Well, you should have a render camera, but since we're not quite rendering yet, I wouldn't worry about that. The perspective camera you can always change to any view you want, and you should model, I repeat, you should model with your perspective camera or your top camera or your side camera or your back camera, your orthogonal cameras. You can model in any of those, but please, 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 please render only with your render camera or with a new camera that you create. Name that camera render camera. If our computer laptop cannot handle some of these programs, should we go to the library? Do they have the same software there? Yes, they do. They definitely have Maya in the library. I don't know how many copies, but they definitely have it in the lab. I know that they have it at least for 3 machines. You can also go into 405 if there's no class being held in 405, that is. I don't know. 405 in Franklin Terrace has every computer with Maya on it, and ZBrush, by the way. So I would say if there's no class in 405, definitely use those computers. They're very, very powerful, and they also have everything. I mean, they have like Maya, they have ZBrush, they have Unreal Engine, they have Unity, they have Photoshop, they just have all the things. So definitely use the 405 computers if you are able to. If you can't use the computers in 405, maybe there's a class, then go to the library. Ideally, you should have a laptop that can handle Maya. I think the only way that might not happen is if maybe you have an i3 or an i5 with an Intel GPU, then maybe you're going to be at a bit of a disadvantage over the people that have like i7s or i9s with an NVIDIA card. So I want to repeat, I know I'm boring people because people are dropping off Twitch, but for tech stuff, definitely go to the basement of the library. They should be able to help you. If they can't help you, I can give you the email of my friend in IT, and he definitely can help you. If you want, I can totally do that. Your computers should be able to handle Maya, and they certainly should be able to handle something as simple as a candle and candlestick. Okay, so I hope I answered your questions. If your laptop cannot handle Maya, it must be a really old laptop, because honestly, even the i3s and the i5s will still run Maya. It might be a little slow compared to the i7s and the i9s, but it'll still run regardless. Anyway, I hope that answered the question. I'm going to move on to the Wick, and then I want to make a table with you guys. So, yeah, it's probably an IT problem. The first week or two, every term, people have problems with either their Maya installs or with things breaking or just technical issues. And again, my best advice is to go to the basement of the library. Ask them first, and if for some reason, I mean, they're going to fix like 90% or more of your problems. But if somehow if somehow the library can't fix it, then John or Bob in IT will. So, okay, I'm going to move on to the Wick. So the Wick is kind of an organic form here. It's a little irregular. It's not a perfect cylinder. You should still start with a cylinder. I recommend that. Because what I always think about, to the point now where even in real life, I walk around going, what primitive does that look most like? I'm sitting here and I have my roommate's wagon next to me, and I don't know why he has a wagon, but he's got a wagon. So he's got a wagon next to me, and I'm looking at this wagon, I'm like, wow, that's just like a lot of cubes, basically, that you want to flatten out and make into the walls for the wagon. And then I see, oh, there's like a big metal part that you would use to drag the wagon around, and it's, yeah, that's a cylinder. That's definitely a cylinder there. So when you think about 3D modeling, you should think about, what does your object mostly look like? Does the object mostly look like a cylinder? Well, then start with a cylinder. Does the object mostly look like a sphere? Obviously start with a sphere. We're going to make a table here in a minute. And so what do tables generally look like? I mean, again, every table's, a little different perhaps, but for the table that we're going to make today, it's kind of boxy, you know? So if you know it's boxy, then you think, well, I should probably start with a box. That type of modeling, we actually have a name for it. If you guessed box modeling, good guess, because that's what we call it. Sounds weird, but yeah, box modeling, still very popular, still a thing, and still valuable. Lots of people still box model. I personally have a little bit of PTSD when it comes to box modeling, because I did it for so many years. But I'm over it for the most part. So, yeah, I'll teach you box modeling. But I will also say that it's maybe not always the best way to model. For example, never model a human head starting with a box. Yeah, it can be done, but you could also spend days and days modeling a head from a box. And I personally think that's kind of a waste of time when there are better ways to do it. I'll give myself 4 subdivisions. I always give myself at least 2 for caps, and this just gives me a little bit of geometry to play with. I can now scale, move the Wick into place, and because this is a little bit more of an organic and randomized form, we could kind of shape this a bit by moving around some vertices. B again turns your soft select on and off. In this case, you could try doing a little rotation, for example. That. Or if you want to be like a cool kid, you could turn on your soft select, change the fall off, right? And then that way, it's going to actually affect more of the model. So like if I want this to be tapered, which these wicks are definitely tapered, I can turn my soft select down. I just hold down B and drag, R for scale. And then, see, it's going to taper in. Maybe I want that to taper more. Hold down B, drag your soft select, scale. And there we go. Something like that, right? All right. Now hit the F button for fit. Oh, that fit my selection, didn't it? That fit what I have selected. So if I have the object selected, like F8, object is green, I hit F for fit, that fits the object to the screen. If I select the candle, hit F for fit, fits the object to the screen. If I want to see the whole thing, I hit A for all. Anyway, camera shortcuts, remember? F for fit, A for all, and then brackets. Don't forget your brackets, because brackets are like undo and redo for your camera. So this is like forward camera perspective, back camera. It's just a history for your camera. Because remember, the Z button, or the Control Z button, is going to be undo for your models, not your cameras. Undo for your camera, again, brackets, or redo camera, or undo camera. So anyway, useful, and of course, F for fit and A for all. Right. Is everybody okay with the candle demo? Like, I want to know, does anybody need me to go over the candle stuff more? Anyone? I hear a beep. Where's the beeping coming from? It's a game of find the beeping. This is, somebody's chatting somewhere, maybe. Yeah. I guess that's Twitch. Yes. Oh, got it. Should we keep refining it on our blogs? Yes. So absolutely. Cool. So the way that the class works, all my classes, you have to put your assignments on your blog before the next class. So, for example, this candle is now due for Tuesday's class. And so you need to finish it for Tuesday's class. It needs to be on your blog for Tuesday's class before next class. So before the start of class on Tuesday, you need to have your candle on your blog. In fact, you should have your candle on your blog and this table that I'm about to make. It should be pretty easy, I hope. Do a little box modeling with the table, and that's what's due on your blog. Basically, anything I ask you to put on your blog is due before the next class on your blog. So, if there are no other questions, I'll continue. And I can always, well, I will actually check your blog randomly. I'll definitely check your blog on Tuesday. The first assignment, that is to say, what was due for today, was just simply to have a blog and a blog entry. That's all I wanted for homework for today. For Tuesday, however, or the next class, I definitely want this candle finished, and hopefully your table too. So hopefully that's all clear. And yeah, I'm just going to keep going. Again, interrupt me if you have any questions, either via chat or via voice, either one.
If we already finished our...
Interrupt me if you have any questions, either via chat or voice. Wow, I don't know how that happened. Let me...
if we already finished our...
If you have any questions, either via chat or... Sorry. Hold on. Okay, I don't know what just happened, but sorry. I'm getting an echo. I'm trying not to have that, but... Okay, what was the question again? Sorry. I'm getting an echo. I'm trying not to have that. But... Okay, what was the question again? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go in the chat on Twitch.
Yeah, I'm getting a weird echo. I think it's because the microphone in OBS
really close to their speaker and their mic was going on and off, I don't think the audio was getting picked up.
Okay.
Because it wasn't happening earlier, and like I saw someone's mic going off, but then they muted, so I think you're fine. But yeah.
Got it. Okay, so I just turned the OBS audio back on and muted my microphone on Discord. So hopefully that fixes all problems. I hope. So let me know if you guys have any other issues. But yeah, I want to move on to the table, and then, like I said, this is due on your blog for Tuesday. And yeah, as always, just interrupt me or ask questions or whatever you need. So here we go. Box modeling. Like I said, I have a little bit of PTSD, so when it comes to box modeling, I'm like, oh God, I never really want to do this again. But I will say that it's back to that whole thing, like I was just mentioning a minute ago, of what's the fastest way to get to where you're going, and oftentimes it's by starting with primitives. So even though I'm a little adverse to starting with a box all the time, it's because, well, this just used to be a, not even common, but just like standard modeling practice is always start with a box, and it's like, no, that's not always the case. If I'm making a table, though, logically, a box might be a good idea, right? So then I make my box, or what will be my table, and then from here I'll scale this out. It's always a good idea to look at reference, but right at this very second, I want to have a little fun. So I prefer you always to model from a reference. Always, always, always. But let's just sort of block it in first, and I can check for a little reference in a minute. Oh yeah, I want to type something in the Discord announcement, which I mentioned a minute ago. And I'm putting this in the announcements, and I'm going to pin it. And I'm putting it in all caps, because that's how serious I am about this. Always model in quads. I mean, really, please. There are always exceptions to every rule, rather. But this one is like just it's just good modeling practice. Some people might just immediately disagree with me and say, hey man, video games, we can definitely model in triangles all day long in video games. And yeah, that's right. I'm not going to argue with that logic at all. But there are reasons why we model in quads versus modeling in triangles. If you want to model in triangles, you are certainly allowed to do that for video games. That's important. Visual effects modelers almost never use triangles. I mean, again, occasionally. But the difference is this. I'll show you why. Because if you want to polysmooth this, remember that's like the 3 button is just a preview. And you can already see that's weird, right? If we use the actual polysmooth command, we get that. We can turn up the divisions if you want, like so. See? Now, what's the big deal? Well, when you polysmooth, each one of these quads, so if I select a face, like that, and I polysmooth it, how many faces did I just create? I created 4. So every single time that you polysmooth a quad, you get 4 more quads. And this concept applies across the board. It applies to ZBrush, it applies to Mudbox, it applies to 3D Studio Max, it applies to Maya, it applies to basically all 3D modeling. If you're going to polysmooth something or divide, it's called dividing in ZBrush, or subdividing, sometimes people call it, then, whatever quads you have selected, click polysmooth, and you're going to see that you get 4 quads every single time you polysmooth. If I take the entire object, right, and I polysmooth it, again, same thing, 4 quads for each smooth. Now watch what I do here. I'm going to make a new edge loop, and I'm going to pinch the edge loop up towards the top here. Do it towards the bottom here. Then I'll hit, instead of the 3 button, like normally I would hit the 3 button, that's what I get. Actually, this is a really great demonstration because if you have 2 or 3 on, well, let's say 2 right now, then you can actually see the base mesh plus the smoothed or preview, I guess, of the smoothed thing. Watch how this works with my insert edge loop tool. If I slide this edge loop here, it's going to give me this kind of a bevel. Again, if I slide my edge loop really close to the other one and I release, tighter bevel. Right? And you can do it this way too. All right. So now I hit the 3 button, click off of it, and I have a really nice kind of beveled tabletop. If you want to turn the wireframe off, go to shading, turn off wireframe on shaded. Hey guys. So that's a little box modeling, kind of reviewing the same idea, right? But I'm going to keep going. I mentioned the whole poly smoothing always takes 1 quad and makes 4 quads out of every 1 quad. So check this out. If I were to select this guy and I were to poly smooth it, boop, now you can see exactly what I mean. I have 4 times the density. If I turn up my division, I'm going to have 4 times the density again. If I turn up the division again, I'm going to have 4 times the density again. That's poly smoothing. When I click the 3 button, I'm showing a preview of this without actually changing the topology. So poly smoothing, again, this icon, if you want to know what it is in the menu, it's like, I think, let's see, mesh tools or edit mesh. Where are you? Smooth, poly smooth, poly smooth. There it is, mesh smooth, same thing. So mesh smooth, if you're going to export this to ZBrush or export it to your game engine or export it anywhere really, you probably want to use this smooth, poly smooth. If you're going to just stay in Maya, honestly, I would just hit the 3 button, and that's fine too, right? So anyway, tabletop. Now, so let's continue our box modeling. Box modeling again means that you start from box. I know that sounds really dumb, but that's just the way things were done for many, many, many years. And in some cases, they're still done the same way. So, in like making this table, it kind of makes sense. So F11 for face selection, I select this face. I select this face. This face. I'm holding down Shift so that I can select multiple faces. And this is a very important concept, so I really hope you guys are paying attention right now because this one's going to really come up a lot. I want to pull these faces down, or specifically I want to extrude these faces. Extrusion is a very important polymodeling concept. It's going to be on your bar here, right here. This is your polymodeling shelf. So if I click this, that's created an extrusion. You can't tell until I pull the blue arrow down. And now I'm extruding my legs out. And again, you might say, well, that looks like a really weird table, and yeah, it definitely does. So hit the 1 button, and you can kind of see a little bit better what the extrusion has done. I'm having a little fun here, and by fun, I mean I'm not like looking at any reference, but just kind of doing this on the fly, because I just kind of want to show you, again, how this works. So if I shift select these faces, I click extrude, and I pull down. You can totally see now, when I hit the 3 button, that's got a nicer bevel. So same idea of inserting edge loops, right? So if I insert an edge loop under mesh tool, or if you want to be a cool kid, maybe you can, the other thing you can of course do, as we've discussed already, if you select any component, vertice, edge, or face, you can always shift right click and get to a lot of the poly modeling stuff here. This saves on mouse miles. This prevents carpal tunnel syndrome. Just do it. It's faster, right? So then what do I want? I want what? I want to select my edge. I want to use shift right click, and I want to go to insert edge loop tool. And then I can just insert these guys up here, slide my edges up. And as I slide my edges up, as I pinch my edge loops together, that's going to preserve that detail, right? So let's look at the difference. Now I hit the 3 button, and see now this detail is preserved here and here, but not here. If I, again, slide the edge loop up and release, then, and get close, right? So, and release, and now we have better detail. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody, I hope. And of course you could add additional edge loops like you did with the candlestick, and then, you know, scale or slide or translate. That's your call. Now, depending on the table, they're all designed differently, right? So depending on the table, the legs might be the same object as the tabletop, but I don't know about you guys, but most tables I've seen personally, the legs are separate objects. Undo, 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 undo. Oh, okay. Now we're back to here. So if the legs are separate objects, then model them as separate objects. I'm going to hide I will hide this image plane, this reference here. Who remembers the shortcut for hide? Anybody? Speak up, I can't hear you. Video froze. It's probably lagging. Table and candle due for Tuesday. With candle with multiple parts, or like, you know, like your yep, that's right. H is what I was looking for. So candle. So candle should be candle, candlestick, and wick. Table plus table legs. So I guess what I'm really saying here is that you can make your table legs part of the table if you want, like I was just doing with the extrude function, and I can extrude these table legs one at a time by using extrude. Like that, you know, that's one option. Select your different faces, your 4 faces, and click extrude. I'm offering this as an option. Now, here's something cool too. You could change your divisions up here to like 3 or 4 divisions and immediately make those edge loops. This is one way to do it if you wanted to. Most tables are not made this way. Most tables have their legs as separate objects, right? So instead of like extruding the legs out, I'm sure there are some tables, like plastic tables, that maybe work this way, but let's pretend it's a wooden table. And so maybe we want to make our table legs a little bit differently. Let's again use a cylinder. And let's kind of just, for funsies, make a random shape. I say random, I mean, we just went over this with the candle stick or the candle holder, whatever. We just went over these concepts, so this is kind of like a review here, where, hey, I want this table leg to have a particular shape to it. And generally speaking, I always look at photo reference, but in this case, I kind of want to just have a little fun and wing it. B turns on my soft select. Holding down B and drag allows me to change the soft select fall off. Oops. So B, right? And then something like that. And you can see I'm making kind of a fancy wooden kind of table leg here. And this is exactly the same thing we did with the candlestick, right? We would add an edge loop wherever we need detail. So if I want to add some detail, basically I'm going to add an edge loop, right? And then once I add the edge loop, I'm going to scale, maybe with soft select off in this case. Rinse, wash, repeat. Y to repeat the tool. Oops. Make sure that you are clicking and dragging vertically, then scaling. I want to emphasize that again. Y to repeat the tool. You got to click on one of the vertical lines. Why is that? Because if you click, we'll say this way, then you're going to make an edge loop in the wrong axis. You're going to make an edge loop going vertically. We want our edge loops to go horizontal. So then if we want the edge loops to go horizontal, Y to repeat the tool. Make sure that you're actually clicking and dragging on the vertical line. And then we can kind of have a little fun here and just, I don't know, make an interesting shape. Hit the 3 button. That's not exactly what I was looking for, but sure, why not? I'm gonna go with that. Y for move. That's kind of an interesting table leg, sort of. I know I should always be like modeling from reference, yes, but once in a while, if you're just starting out learning and you want to have a little bit of fun, yeah, model out of your imagination just so you don't get burned out. I don't know. You're going to be matching photo reference a lot. So I occasionally like to model stuff out of my head just because, you know, it's a little less boring for me to do that. But I mean, whatever floats your boat, honestly. For this assignment, for the table, you're going to be modeling stuff from photos for the rest of the term. Really, you are. So like if you want to have a little bit of fun with this table and model something goofy out of your head, it's only the second day of class, you know. So have some fun with it. Sure, absolutely. Why not? I don't want you guys to get burned out on the first day. Oh my God, this sucks. I don't ever want to do this. No, I really don't want that to happen. I don't want you guys to be so frustrated that you quit this quickly. You know, that's ridiculous. Try to have some fun. So I guess what I'm saying is if you want to model your table legs from your imagination like I'm doing right now, then sure, why not? We're going to be modeling from photo reference a lot. So let's do something maybe that isn't necessarily from photo reference, you know, just to have some fun. Hit the 3 button. Remember, if you want to preserve detail, like for example, up here at the top here, right? Make your selection, hit F for fit. Hit the 1 button. Hit the Y button to make a new edge loop. Scale your edge loop out. Hit the Y button again to make a new edge loop. Scale your edge loop if you want, or not. Lastly, let's go down back here to the bottom. This guy I definitely want to add some edge loops to. Y to repeat. Squeeze the edge loops together. And the tighter you squeeze the edge loops, the more detail is preserved when you hit the 3 button. I'm about to show you a really, really cool modeling tip, so please pay attention. How do you get to the tab on an object where you control the number of edges? Oh, good question. That's going to be the channel bar. So if I have my object selected, like F8 for object selection, then you're going to see here, you should see a channel bar. It's going to be under the lock. That's your channel bar. And that's going to show you your entire history as well as your 3D translation, or this is like move, rotate, scale, and visibility. So the channel bar will show you your 3D transformation. You were asking about how do I see the initial edge loops. That's the first input, like the very first one. Subdivision height, subdivision caps. Once you start modeling, see every single thing I've done here makes a new command in the input stack, which is great. That's like your modeling history. But what's not so great is this can slow down your process if the stack becomes too ridiculous and out of control. So you can delete your history by going to Edit, Delete by Type History, or Alt-Shift-D. I'm not gonna. I don't think I'm gonna quiz you on that shortcut, but it's a good one to know, really. Alt-Shift-D. Anyway, watch what happens. I click Alt-Shift-D, and that's going to get rid of this entire stack of history. I do want to mention that when you start modeling a lot and the stack gets really tall, you can't just go back to this original first input. If you try to change things now, you're going to get some really weird results, and you might crash Maya. So typically, change this stuff first, and then begin modeling. Don't think you can just go backwards in time, because, well, you should be able to, but watch what happens. If I now change my subdivisions, hopefully I don't crash Maya, hit save, Command S. Now I'll change my subdivisions to like 5 or 4. Ugh. See what happened? It just kind of broke it, you know. So anyway, delete the history. What was it? Alt-Shift-D. Bam. Deletes the history. And now we can keep going. Okay, hopefully that was clear. Any questions about that? Wait. Okay. So, wait, I don't see the radius and height and axis stuff under the history. Under the history. You mean under the input stack? Wait, radius and height and axis stuff under the history. Oh, it's the first, I think you're referring to the first, like when you make something, anything, like I'll make a sphere. Oh, and by the way, I personally don't really like I don't really like interactive creation. I know it's weird, but I prefer just doing it without interactive creation, and then that way I have a sphere and I don't have to worry about putting the sphere on the grid. So I actually prefer interactive creation off, but that's a personal preference. You can turn interactive creation on and off by going to Create, Polygon, and then at the bottom here of this menu is interactive creation. So whatever floats your boat. People that started modeling with 3D Studio Max love it. And if that's what you want to keep on, and always make the base of your cube and then the height, or the base of your cylinder and then the height, then by all means just go ahead and use interactive creation. I'm old school, so I actually prefer it off. But that's a personal preference. I'm not saying one is better than the other. Anyway, from here, the question was, how do I see the sort of the attributes of this? And remember, under the input stack, the very first one, that's going to be your subdivisions and your radius. So that's probably the question you were asking, I think. Anytime that you create a new object, emphasis on new, so it has to be a new polygon, we'll say. Then when you create a new object, you'll get under the input stack these different attributes that you can initially change. For example, subdivisions, 10 and 10, maybe, like that. And here's something cool. You can actually click and drag inside of here and make it interactive. So I personally think that's super cool. I don't know. I guess I'm easily amused. I'm not sure. But yeah, you can actively change these numbers, and I think that's nice. There's also radius. Whoop, wow, so big. Oh my god. Got some snapping going on there. It's snapping the whole numbers is what's going on. You can always type in the number as well. Or you can just click and drag. Right? I think that was the question that you were asking. Hopefully I answered it, I think. Yes. Input stack. Yes, to get to your input stack again, I repeat, it's going to be in your channel bar. So when you make an object, you should see your channel bar. If you don't see your channel bar, it's under the lock. Make sure the object is selected. Turn the channel bar on. Once you begin modeling, then you can't really go back to the first input so well. So I suggest changing this stuff first before you begin your modeling. So adjust your input stack, or excuse me, the first input, Polysphere 1, before you do anything else. And I suggest always start with a low subdivision. Generally speaking, that's a good idea to start with low polygon count as a whole. You don't always have to, but I suggest it. It's just better to stay low poly as long as possible. You can think of it as less polygons mean, less polygons mean less problems, less worries, less work. So if you keep your poly count low, then hopefully that'll be less work overall, generally speaking. All right, is everybody with me? Is anybody not with me? Say something. Anyone? Please. I don't trust it when the class is just quiet. Yes, okay. Good enough, I guess. I've still got Discord audio on as far as I know, so if anybody wants to speak up, I should be able to hear you just fine. I definitely prefer hearing you, but either way, I'll respond to voice or chat as much as I can. Okay, we're with you. Good. Got it. All right, I'm going to move on. So I have one table leg, but I want all four. So next thing is I want to duplicate this guy. You're welcome to model from photography. In fact, you should. But like I said, I'm just having a little fun here because, you know, we're going to be modeling with photography for the rest of the class. So wherever we can have a little fun. Here's a cool tip. I keep saying F for fit and A for all, and brackets will undo and redo your cameras. Here's another one. If you want to zoom into a particular area, we can actually use a marquee zoom, kind of like Photoshop. It's Control plus Alt, draw a box around what you want to zoom to. I repeat, Control plus Alt, draw a box around what you want to zoom to. So that's nice. And here's the, I think this is a pretty great technique. So, and this is one I will go over a lot more. Don't worry. I'll click 1 to go back to my base mesh, and then I'll select all of the vertices on the bottom of this leg, like all of these guys. And you'll notice I have this kind of rounded bottom, and that might be okay, but let's say I want to flatten this. Say I want this to be basically flattened into a planar or just flat in general. Like, how do I do it? So this is, I guess you'd call this a pro tip. I think it's pretty useful. I would write this down if I were you, because it's pretty cool. If I want to make this planar or flatten it out, I click R for scale. I have my scale widget, and what I want to do is I want to scale in the perpendicular axis, which in this case is Y. And if I scale towards the center box, then I've flattened out. I've made it planar. I've just flattened out that leg completely. And now if I hit the 3 button, you can see the result. Looks pretty good. Flat foot, right? Okay, so I'd say this is done. I want to duplicate it. I guess if you want to do it to the top two, like the top of the leg, just for review purposes, we'll do it one more time. Because, you know, repetition is good. Say I want to make this flat, I want to make this planar, I don't want this weird point up there. Control plus Alt will allow me to zoom to the box. Then I want to flatten this out. I'll hit F9 for my vertice selection. Oh, always model, or at least I suggest anyway, modeling with the 1 button on versus 2 versus 3. Sure, you can model in any of those modes. You can model in 2, you can model in 3, but I recommend model in 1 and then check in 3. That's my strong advice. So then at this point, I'll select the vertices that I want to flatten out. You know, maybe these. I'll hit R for scale, and I'll scale towards the center, like that. And then again, hit 3, and we have a nice flat top. That's how you make things planar. I think that that's a really useful trick, personally. You can make things planar in different axes. It doesn't always have to be the same axis, but you always have to remember to scale in the perpendicular axis of what you're trying to flatten. So let's see if I can give you an example of what I mean. If I were to select, we'll say, a bunch of vertices like this way. Hold on. Like this, right? Select all these vertices. Now I want to flatten it this way. See, if I scale towards the center, what have I just done? Well, now I've flattened it out along that particular axis. Pretty useful. So if you ever want to make anything planar, that's how you do it. Anyway, I think it's useful. I don't know about you guys, but okay. Moving on. And again, interrupt me, guys. Please, actually, I beg of you to interrupt me because I get tired of listening to myself talk all the time. So I'd appreciate it if you interrupt me. So no questions? Anybody? Questions? Can you repeat how you went from smoothing the table to making it square for the table? Can you repeat how you went from smoothing the table to making it square? I'm not sure what you mean about making it square. Oh, you mean like preserving the details? Yeah, I mean, again, it's just it's okay. Actually, I can answer that question very easily. So when you have a cube to start with, again, this is called box modeling because we're starting with a box. I know it's a shocker. So if I just start with a simple cube like this, and I hit the 3 button, what happens? I get that. And that's like not a cube, right? That's like, now it's like circular, it's like a disc or something. So here's the best way I can demonstrate this to you. Again, you should generally model with 1 on as a whole. If you have a really fast computer, then you don't have to. The faster the computer, the more you can like model in the 3 mode, but it's still a little dangerous. Watch what happens when I slide this edge loop. I slide this edge loop. I hit the 3 button. See what happened? It preserved that detail. By the way, if you want to get into this mode, it's the 2 button. The 2 button shows me the base mesh plus the smooth preview. And then again, I slide my edge loop, release. Click slide edge loop, release. And now I have a nice beveled table. And you can do this with multiple, multiple axes. And now I have a nice beveled table. All right? 1 is what it looks like as a base mesh. 2 and 3. Usually I want to have 3 on. Actually, write this down for your notes. You should always check the 3 button on everything you have in the scene. So every polygon in the scene, always click the 3 button, because we don't want to render a box. We want to render a beveled table, right? So then always click the 3 button for every piece of geometry in your scene, always and forever. Amen. You have to forgive my teaching style sometimes is a little informal, but I'm trying to get you guys to have some fun here and not just be overwhelmed with the technical stuff. I know people get really overwhelmed with the technical stuff, and I really want to prevent that from happening. I want you guys to try to have as much fun as possible and not like freak out over the technical stuff. So, and on that note, always ask me to repeat myself if you need me to, or interrupt me, or whatever you need. So, let's make another table leg. We want to duplicate this leg. It's going to be under edit duplicate, but I hate these mouse miles. You know me, man, these mouse miles, they're just a killer. They're going to give you carpal, man. Carpal tunnel, it's going to happen. RSI, it sucks, let me tell you. So let's not do that. Let's not like always go up to the menu every time. Oh God, it's under edit, duplicate. No, it's Control D. Come on, you guys, shortcuts are good. Control D, W. Bam, 2 legs. That wasn't hard. Right? Now, hold down Shift, select both legs. Now I have both legs selected. If you guessed Control D, you guessed correctly. And I have my table done. Wasn't that hard, was it? Pretty easy. Okay, you can name all this stuff if you want. You can name each one of these legs if you want. I know I got through saying just a minute ago, name everything. Do I really need to name every leg? Yeah, that's a little bit much. So what can I do here to make this process a little bit easier for me, as opposed to naming each leg, which is, again, Maybe a little bit redundant, possibly. So what do? I select the legs, either in the outliner or in the display. I don't care, whichever. Select your legs. And then I'll group them together using the shortcut Control G. Control G groups. See? So now all the legs are under a new group, and I'll call this group table legs. Now we've got, instead of having to label every single cylinder, like, oh God, gotta label every one of these, let's save a little time here, group them together, and then just label the group. Of course, this is going to be a table top. That. And if I want to group this stuff together again, I can select everything, select the table leg group, select the tabletop, and if you guessed Control G to make another group, yes, that's what I would do. And then I'll just make this one group table. And under the table group, I have my table legs and I have my tabletop. So welcome to grouping. Grouping is really important. Grouping is how we can organize our scene. Grouping is your friend. Don't be afraid to group. Group is a way to organize everything. You should always organize everything whenever possible. So I've grouped all my table components together. I can do the same thing with my candle. F for fit. Shift select the different parts. Q is select. Now I have the different parts selected. I hit Control G, group into a new group called candle. So I got a table group, I got a candle group. I mean that's the main stuff I wanted to go over today. Can we keep going? What do you guys think? We still have plenty of time. Plenty of time. You want to do something fun? Do some fun stuff? There's such a lag, it's crazy. I'm seeing myself a minute later. my Twitch tab. Yeah, sure, let's keep going. Okay. Do we want to make some fruit bowl? Do you want to go that route, or do we want to do something crazy and do some like cloth? Yes, the Twitch stream should be recorded. So for those of you guys worried about this stuff, I repeat, the Twitch screen, I think at least, is being recorded right now, as far as I know. So yes, you can watch the Twitch recording later, if you're worried about that. I don't know. I need a vote. I need somebody to actually speak up and say, yeah, go ahead and cover the fruit bowl, or optionally, we can make a tablecloth, which is a lot more advanced, but on the other hand, might be fun. I don't want to like I don't want you guys to be overly overwhelmed on the first or the second day of class. So if cloth seems like a bit much on the second day, that's fine. We can just do the fruit bowl, or we can go for cloth, and I can make it optional, meaning that if you want to tackle cloth for Tuesday, you can try it out. Or if you feel like that's way too much, then just have the candle on the table. That's really the important part. So I need a vote here. Do you guys want me to cover cloth for a tablecloth?
I vote cloth.
Yes? Okay, cloth. Cloth it is. Cool. All right, guys. I think this is fun, personally. Don't forget, if you have a really like crazy input stack, this might start slowing you down. This is your history. Just delete it. That's Alt-Shift-D. No more history. That will speed up your workflow significantly. So remember that deleting your history speeds things up, makes things more stable as a whole. All right, let's do some cloth. I personally love cloth. I think it's fun. Under poly modeling, we'll make a plane. Oh, where'd it go? Plane? There it is. It's just really small. Tiny plane. Now I'll scale this out and make it huge. Well, I mean huge being relative here. This is going to be a tablecloth. So how big should it be? I mean, that's kind of when I say relative, I mean how far should it drape down? We don't want this to be too big because we don't want it to drape past like the feet, right? So you kind of have to scale it till you think it's like long enough to maybe go down half the table. So maybe let's scale it a little bit more. About that, roughly. I think that'll be okay. And for cloth to work, we do need a little density. And this might not be enough. And so this is arbitrary, I want to add. If we don't have enough density, our cloth doesn't look like cloth at all. It looks just bad. It looks chunky. It looks low poly. If we have too much density, then our cloth will take forever to compute. So I'm afraid this is a little bit arbitrary, meaning that if I go to my input stack, I go to subdivisions, I'm going to go with 20, and I'm going to guess that 20 should be enough to give me my result. If it doesn't look good, then obviously pump it up to 30 or 40 or whatever you think gives you better results. I repeat, if the numbers are too high, this will take forever and your computer will hate you and overheat and, just slow down a lot. So if the numbers are too high, then it's kind of like just really pushing your computer a little too hard. If the numbers are too low, then you don't get something that looks like cloth. So 20 or 25, I'll go with 25 maybe, because my computer's an i7 and I'm hoping it can handle it. All right, so here we go. Next, we have a shelf. These are all shelves. So there's a curve and surface shelf, there's a poly modeling shelf, there's a sculpting shelf. Oh my God, it's like ZBrush is built right there into Maya. Look at that, there's your sculpting shelf. ZBrush and Mudbox took so much market share away from Maya that they just sort of threw this shelf in there because, hey, why would you bother learning Mudbox or ZBrush if you have the sculpting tools here built into Maya? So that's kind of cool. Your rigging shelf for making your 3D skeleton, your animation shelf, we probably won't touch this, sorry. Your rendering shelf, yeah, we'll be using this a lot. Your effects shelf, that's the one I'm looking for. So the effects shelf here actually has your cloth on it, as well as some dynamic curve stuff. But we want to worry about these t-shirt icons over here. This is what I'm interested in, is what looks like a t-shirt. So I select the plane, and I click the t-shirt plus icon. This creates a cloth object based, or basically turns this into a cloth object. And obviously name everything, so this is going to be my table cloth. I double click, name it. Now, here's the thing about cloth. It is a simulation. It requires a timeline to simulate. And right now I don't see a timeline, so I'm like, what the heck? How am I going to run this simulation with no timeline? And that is a very valid question. The answer is, go to the top right corner where that lock is. You're going to see under workspace that I have Maya standard modeling, and I have no idea why this is the default because, man, I've been using this since Maya version 2. Yeah, I'm an old fart. So Maya Classic. And when I go to Maya Classic, I get my timeline. Thank you. I don't know why that's not default. It was default for, I don't know, 20 plus years. Whatever. So, yeah, if you don't see a timeline, change your workspace to classic or perhaps animation, because we need this timeline. It's important. I don't care if you use the animation workspace or you use the classic workspace. I just want to make sure I have a timeline. Okay, so that's how you get your timeline if in case you don't have one. We're not going to really be doing animation in the class, so this is a little bit on the intermediate level, but I still think it's fun. Next, we go to our outliner at the bottom here. We want to select our nCloth node. Actually, on second thought, let's just hit play. What happens? Well, you can see the tablecloth just drops because cloth simulation always has gravity, and if you just hit play, the gravity is going to make that cloth object drop because, again, gravity is on by default for a cloth simulation. However, we have this problem where the cloth just simply drops right through the table. and we don't want that. So next, select the nCloth node in your outliner. Next, Shift select the tabletop. Once you have both the nCloth node selected and Shift selected the tablecloth, go back to your effects shelf, go back to where that t-shirt icon was. Note that the second t-shirt icon has a bouncy arrow. This is basically a collision tool. So as long as you have the nCloth node selected and you Shift select what you want it to collide with, which is specifically I want it to collide with the tabletop, then click this t-shirt with the bouncy arrow. That's going to turn on your collision. Now we can hit play. Let's see if we get what we want. Hopefully. Very slow. Oh, there it goes. There it goes. Look at that. So I ran out of frames. Very easy to fix. So down here, you see on the lower left side is frame 1 here. And this is kind of your animation range. I have from 1 to 120. Let's change this to say, I don't know, 400 frames. Instead, click rewind, click play, and there it goes. And there goes my cloth simulation. And who's got questions? Let the simulation run for as long as it takes. I've got questions. Why is this looking so terrible? How about that? Not very cloth-like, is it? Let's rewind. This guy seems to have quite a few polygons. How about this guy? Your collision object, as well as your cloth object, should have a decent amount of polygons. Again, this is going to slow down stuff, but let's undo really quick. Undo, 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 until the cloth is gone. Let's go back here. Okay. Now there are no more cloth nodes, so basically I'm back to where I started with this. I'm going to increase this to 30, actually, yeah, 35. So I'll add more density, and yes, it will slow it down, I'm aware of that. And yes, I'm going to poly smooth this guy, again giving it more density. This is again under poly modeling smooth. And yeah, you're saying, well, you just got through saying to keep things simple and keep things low poly. I know I said that, I'm aware. But for cloth to work well, you need to give it a decent number of polygons. It makes a huge difference. Now, I'll move the cloth object so that it's just hovering just barely right above the tabletop. I mean, just barely above it. And by the way, it does need to be above it. Please do not intersect your collision object with your cloth. So, now, rinse, wash, repeat. Let's do this again. We go to our effects shelf. We have the tablecloth object selected. We click this T-shirt plus button. That turns this into a cloth object. Now it's a cloth object, but it's going to simply, fall forever. So we want to add collision. We select the nCloth node. We Shift select the tabletop. Second icon, add your collision. Now we hit play. And hopefully we see better results because I have a lot more polygons. And this is where the people with those i3 processors or those i5 processors are going to just kind of hate life. If you have an i9 or an i7, then this is going to be a lot less painful. It still feels like it's not quite there, but it's getting a lot closer. You can see as the timeline progresses, the simulation is draping more and more. It is a little painful, I'm not going to lie. And again, if you have a slower computer, this might take a while. I kind of thought this would be a little faster, personally. But I guess I'm just used to the school's computers for cloth. I mean, I have an i7, so, and an NVIDIA GPU. What can I do to make this maybe look a little better? Well, if I go to Nucleus, or sorry, if I go to my nCloth node, so for your notes, and this is a good one, select your nCloth node, hit Control A. Control A is like your attribute editor. And in your nCloth node, we actually have presets. Check this out. I can actually make a cloth preset for like silk or a t-shirt or leather or rubber or, I don't know, plastic, loose thick knit, lava, honey, denim, concrete, chiffon. What we have for a tablecloth? I don't know. I'm going to go with t-shirt. I know that's not exact, but we don't have a tablecloth preset. Let's see what happens if I use t-shirt. I'll click replace. It actually tells you cotton t-shirt is medium weight and friction, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's see if we get slightly better results now. Hopefully. I'll click play again. And this is where your computer's really going to work hard. So again, if I were to look at my processor right now, it would probably be topped out. It'd probably be like at 100% because cloth simulation just eats a lot of your resources. I'm going to say this about the tablecloth. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it creates great results. I want you guys to try to have fun with this, but I also understand that cloth simulation is relatively intermediate and even arguably advanced. If you don't have a very fast computer, then this is just going to be really painful, and it's not in my interest to cause you guys pain, so I'm going to make this cloth assignment optional for Tuesday, meaning that what is required on your blog, I repeat, is a table and a candle on the table. That's what's required. If you'd like to do this cloth, then try to have some fun with it. If you have a really slow computer, like an i3 or an i5 or an Intel GPU, or I don't know, you're just really having difficulty with cloth, you know what? It's totally optional. It really is. I'm not that worried about you getting cloth dynamics down on the second day of class. I mean, come on. That's a little silly. Even I'm struggling with this right now because, well, I don't know if it's because of OBS or streaming or what, but this is going a lot slower than I expected. You can see that this is taking a long time to compute. So this is very much dependent on how fast your computer is. And if your computer isn't very fast, you might be waiting a very long time for this. Like for me right now, I'm wondering, why does this still look so stiff? Right? It shouldn't be sticking out so much. It should be drooping down a lot more. And I definitely have enough density, I think. Both on the tabletop and on the actual tablecloth. So one last thing I'll try is giving myself more frames. I'll give myself like even 800 frames. I know that seems like a lot, but the more frames that you give Maya to run the simulation with, the better your results may be. And while this is continuing to simulate cloth, I will look at the chat in case people have questions. Whoop. Cloth. Wait, what? Fruits cloth. Cloth, yeah. Go big or go home. Yeah, I'm good with cloth. Okay. I think you can change the frame rate. Yeah, Matt, that does make a difference in terms of your cloth simulation. So let's try that. You're absolutely right. Somebody maybe knows something about Maya, maybe. Yes, so if we go here to the settings down here, we see this guy is like a running guy with a gear. That's going to be your Maya settings. If we go over, there are a few things that you should change. First of all, go to undo. If your infinite undo is not on, then you're going to hate life. So first thing is change this to be on always. You should really always have infinite undo on. Just turn it on. Trust me on this. Next, we want to change what? We want to change our time slider, because maybe we want to play every frame versus 20 frames per second, 24 frames per second. This is usually the default. I have usually found that for cloth simulation, playing every frame is what you want. Yeah. We can try the default of 24 frames per second, but I think that's going to be worse because we'll see what happens. Yep, that was my suspicion. That's what I thought. So note that this is almost at 400 frames, and this is really struggling. So for your notes, and again, this is optional. I'm not making this required. But for your notes, when you're running a cloth simulation or really any simulation in Maya, it's really a better idea to make sure your time slider is set to play every frame and set the playback to 1 frame, or playback by each frame, 1 frame. What that means is that for each frame that we go forward, it's going to calculate that simulation 1 frame at a time. This will give us better results than 24 frames per second. So I suggest making sure that your frame rate is set to play every frame. If we were animating a character animation, then I would say make sure that you're animating your character animation at 24 frames per second. But for cloth simulation, play every frame. And that way your frame rate will be in sync with your simulation, and you should get better results. So, and I apologize, usually when I demonstrate this, it's on the school's computers, and wow, I'm really realizing that those computers in 405 are monsters, and by that I mean like really powerful. So if you're having trouble with your laptop, or you're having trouble, like I'm kind of a little frustrated right now with this, a faster computer is always the answer. And so go ahead and use the faster computers in 405. Or I think in the basement of the library, if you use, I feel like it's like workstation number 2. But you can ask the guys down there, and they'll tell you which computers have Maya. At least 2 computers have Maya. So if you use the library or 405 in Franklin Terrace, you should have much, much faster results than what I'm getting right now. Okay? I don't know if you guys have mostly i7s or i9s, but yeah. I might cut this demo a little short, I mean the cloth, that is, because the simulation is taking much longer than I had hoped. It's working, it's just taking a very long time. So, while we're waiting on the simulation, I'd like to answer any questions you guys might have. So we'll let this run for a few more minutes, and then I'll switch to doing a little bit of fruit bowl stuff. But for what's due for homework, I'll just stick to the table and the candlestick, make it easy for you. Wow, the simulation is taking much longer than I expected. Yeah, well, just let it keep going, I guess. I'll let it go to 600 or 700, and then I'm just gonna like call the cloth demo done. I could let it run for 1200 frames or 1600 frames or thousands of frames, and you're welcome to do that. But in the interest of time, I'm just gonna say this is your workflow. If you want to make a tablecloth, you're welcome to do it. It's optional. It's up to you. If you do opt to make a tablecloth, hopefully you have a fast computer. Make sure to give yourself plenty of frames. I mean, even if you have to give yourself 1,000 frames, that's fine. I do want to mention also that I probably scaled this tablecloth out a little too much, because it looks like the corners are drooping past the feet. So that's not good. And also, actually, you know what? I'm going to stop this. One last little thing. Gravity is set to 9.8. Gravity direction is -1, going that -1 in y, meaning you're going down. This is going to sound really weird, but you can definitely change your gravity to be higher. The default gravity of 9.8, which sounds like a really arbitrary number, that's actually Earth's gravity. So, like, let's say if I wanted the tablecloth to, fly up into the air, I could invert this. Instead of the direction in -1, the direction could be 1, and then the tablecloth is actually going to float upwards at this point. That seems kind of silly, but you can do that. What I'm going to do is make sure that the gravity is, of course, going down, but I want to change the gravity from Earth's gravity, which is 9.8, to something crazy like 20. And we'll see if that pushes the cloth down a little bit more. Theoretically, it should maybe add twice as much force, or more than twice as much force than Earth's gravity, and that might get me closer to where I want to go. But yeah, physics. A little bit of trivia about Maya. A little bit of history. There's this little company you might have heard of called Industrial Light and Magic that worked on a little movie called Star Wars you might have heard of. Well, Industrial Light and Magic used to use a software package called Softimage. Softimage is what I learned on, and interestingly, Softimage was also what VCU started with back in the 90s, late 90s. I'm not that old. And so, yeah. Softimage was like the best 3D package at the time. They used it to make Jurassic Park. It was the best, arguably, 3D software package on the planet. Then Maya got developed, and around Maya version 2, which is around the time that I started using it, Industrial Light and Magic showed interest in Maya, and then like a few versions later, they just simply switched to Maya completely. So the interesting part is like, well, why did they switch from Softimage to Maya? Like, what was the reasoning? And the answer is physics. The physics engine in Maya, at the time anyway, of course things always change and develop over time, but the physics engine in Maya was the best at that time. So Industrial Light and Magic switched to Maya specifically for things like cloth simulation and physics. So now you know why Industrial Light and Magic uses Maya. Specifically, it's physics. And also, by the way, cloth has now been added to the new version of ZBrush, just as an FYI. If you get ZBrush 2021, it has cloth built into it now. Okay. I'm going to call this tablecloth demo kind of done, even though I'm not super happy with it. But I got to move on. Does anybody have any questions before I move on? I think you can change frame rate. Yeah, I did. I changed the frame rate so that it was playing back every frame, which is really what you should do for any kind of simulation. If you use 24 frames per second, again, that's great for character animation, but it's not going to work so well for your cloth simulation. Any kind of simulation, like literally if it has physics involved, like cloth or hair or any physics at all, you should always change your frame rate to every frame, as opposed to 24 frames per second. Okay. Questions? Guys, say something, please. You guys with me? See a lot of people with muted microphones. Yes, the Twitch recording should be there. Any other questions? Nobody? All right. I've got a few minutes left. Question? Anybody?
I think we're good.
Okay. Last thing. Well, obviously I'm opening up the last few minutes here to Q&A, but we'll do one last thing. And that's just going to be to add a bowl. And that'll be it for the day. This is what my cloth kind of turned into. Definitely not my best cloth. But it's the general workflow. I'm looking at this and I'm noticing how chunky this is, so I could probably turn up my polygon count again And that's probably why, see the way this is sticking out like this? It may be just simply that this doesn't have enough polygons. Again, the more polygons or more poly smoothing, the slower the simulation. But let's just like move on to the bowl here really quick, and then I guess we can just call it a day. So what I'll do is I'll shift select all of these things in the outliner, and I'll hit H for hide. That way everything is hidden, and we can move on to other stuff. Remember, this is visibility. 1 is on, 0 is off. By the way, if I want to keep the shape, we'll pretend that I'm happy with this. You can also delete the history. That will keep the shape and disconnect the cloth from the shape. All right. Last thing is a bowl, and then we'll call it a day. So we can make a bowl many different ways. Let's see. Let's make a bowl with a sphere. How about that? I know it seems odd, but here, watch this. We'll scale up this guy. We'll change the poly count to be very low because, again, lower poly count is much easier. So I'll say 8 and 8, maybe. Like I said, really low is good. Super low. Okay. So now we have a very, very low poly sphere. Next, I'll delete the top of the sphere by going into face mode. That's F11, or if you want to right click and you're one of those people, then click to face mode. I'm sorry. I'm an F8 through 12 guy. That's the guy I am, but if you don't want to use your F keys, I can't make you. I will quiz you on that, but you don't have to. You can right click if you want. Delete the faces, right? And then we're getting closer, but you might note that the inside of the bowl is actually black versus the outside. And that's a kind of a weird concept. Let me explain it. If you see gray shaded area, this implies that light is going to bounce off this. If you see this black shaded area, then the light will literally not bounce off this side. And that actually is a big problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the object. Again, hit F8 for object selection mode, or right click object mode, whichever. And then we're going to give it some thickness. Let's scale it first. So we kind of scale this way a little bit, flatten out the bottom. And then after doing that, we'll give it some thickness by clicking the extrude button. Now, from here, we want to use either local translate Z, we could do that. See, that does it. Or, like I like to give you multiple ways, right? The other way to do it is to pull on the blue arrow. So I'll leave it up to you. But I don't want it to turn black because, again, that implies that light does not bounce off anything that has like a black face. It has to do with something called normals. We'll talk more about normals as the class progresses. But in Maya, the black faces imply that the normals are going the wrong way. So for right now, just keep in mind we don't want to see those black faces because, again, that just means the light is not bouncing off that side. So if I pull out, we don't have that problem, and we know the light is bouncing off everything, and I have some thickness, and I can hit the 3 button, and bam, there's my bowl. If I want to, again, tighten up the detail a bit, I'll add what? An edge loop, right? So then shift, right click, insert edge loop, and then slide the edge loop up this way. Hit the 3 button. How does that look? That's not bad. Let's slide another edge loop this way. Hit the 3 button. That's better. I like that better. And then check it. Looks pretty good. Always hit the 3 button for every object in your scene. And then we can kind of set the bowl on the table. Like that. And then scale it. Now, one problem I see pretty consistently across the board is that students have problems with scale. Like, how big should the bowl be? How big should the candlestick be? How big should the candle be? How big? Does anybody know? Can anybody tell me? Like, actually unmute yourself, please. Can anybody tell me what to do about that? Like, how can I fix scale issues? Or how do I know relative scale? In other words, is this table too big? Are these legs too big? I don't know. Is the candlestick or candle too big compared to the bowl? I mean, how can I fix this? Anybody want to guess? Anybody want to tell me? Guys, say something. Anyone? All right, I'm still not used to. Hello, yes.
Photo reference?
Yeah, that's exactly the answer I was looking for. So download a photo.
Something to do with the grid?
No, the answer was photo reference is absolutely correct. So find a photo of a table with a candle and a bowl, you know what I mean? And then, or with some fruit, and then look at your photo reference and gauge your scale based on your photo reference. And that way you have a better idea of, you know, how big the bowl should be compared to the banana or the apple or the grapes or the you know, you understand. So whenever you want to work through scale issues, it's always a great idea to have photo reference. Photo reference, photo reference, photo reference. Oh my God, I cannot emphasize that enough. So please use photo reference. I guess we're about done. It's almost 3:20. I hope you guys haven't all left the class. Who's got questions for me? Because we're almost done with class. Any other questions? No, I'm not answering the phone. Any questions, guys? What's due for homework? I heard somebody say something. What's due for homework? Come on, you guys. What did I say is due for homework? Oh yeah. Okay. I will, I guess, in the
table and candle.
yes, correct. So for homework, your table has to be done, your candle has to be done. It should be on your blog before class.
The table and the candlestick.
I will, I guess. Yeah. In the yes, correct. So for weird echo again. I don't know why I'm getting that. Yeah, so under the fruit bowl scene, you could definitely post your stuff there in the 3D Studio Section 2 text channel, but that's not as important. I repeat, not as important as updating your blog. So please update your blog, most importantly, with this assignment before class. If you wish to place your images in line in Discord, for example, in the Fruit Bowl scene channel, or even in the general chat, we can totally do that. We can talk about it. We can discuss it. I don't mind. But again, I'm grading you based on your blogs. And there's a good reason for that. It's not because I'm trying to torture you or make your life difficult by having you post to multiple places. That's not the point. The point is that your blog is going to be there next week, next month, next year, right? Or however long you want to keep it around until you delete it. Whereas this Twitch channel, this Discord channel, I couldn't get back to it a year from now, could I? So you can think of your blog as actually an online record of your progress. So if we need to check back to it, we can always do that at any time with any internet connection, yada, yada, yada. So please update your blog. I can't emphasize that enough. So put on your blog the table. Put on your blog the candle, candlestick, wick. That's what's really due. If you would like to get ahead of the game, optionally you can put the bowl on your blog, or if you're really super proactive, you can try some cloth. And I'll make that completely optional because cloth is definitely a pain in the butt. You know? So yeah, I'll leave it up to you, cloth being optional. But definitely table and candle. And we will get to the bowl again and the fruit again for next class. It's 3:20, so I guess that's it. Does anybody have any additional questions before I say goodbye? Terrifying cloth. Yeah, well, it's a lot easier when you have a very, very fast computer. In 405, it's a lot better. Yeah, it's a no for me on the cloth. That's fine. It's not required. It's just optional. Is the screen supposed to be black? No. You should not have a black screen. Is the screen black for somebody else, or is it just sleepy pastel? I hope it's not. I hope it's not everybody that has a black screen. That would be annoying. That would be really annoying. Does anybody else have a black screen? I hope not. Because I'm on my phone. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, try to not be on I know you can look at Twitch on your phone, just like you can use Zoom on your phone. But for the purposes of class, I'd really appreciate it if you could use your laptop, if at all possible. Yeah, laptop's gonna be better, please. If you can. Do me a favor. For class, try to use your laptop if you can. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Anything at all? Okay, well, I guess I'm going to say goodbye and stop this stream at this point so that I can move on to the next class, which I think starts in about 5 minutes. It'll be basically repeating a lot of the same content, so if you would like to have a repeat of what we just went over, I'll be doing this again in 5 minutes. So if you need extra review, feel free to stick around. It'll be on the same bat time, same bat place. I mean, same Twitch channel. Man, that's an old reference. Okay, I gotta stop with the old TV reference. So I'm gonna say goodbye to the 1 o'clock class. So goodbye. And I'm gonna stop the stream now.